our semester and pray that you're having a great course and a great season of ministry and your other classes are going well. But today we want to talk about mentoring through the generations. You know, in our changing society, it is harder and harder to do age group ministry as male or female, with children, with adolescents, with collegians, with adults. But there are still some best practices when being in mentoring relationships. I know my life totally changed at 15 when a man in the church, because I grew up fatherless, took a special interest in me and asked my mother permission to just invest in my life on a one-on-one basis. That's where I come to understand those spiritual disciplines we talked about recently and that spiritual formation. My whole life changed through a mentoring relationship with a committed Christian who was several years older than me in the local church. I'm so thankful for his investment. But Dr. Peavy, Dr. Odom, you're a children's specialist, you're a youth specialist. There are some best practices probably that you would recommend for mentoring one-on-one with a child or with an adolescent, maybe even with adults, Dr. Stewart and Dr. Stone. Then what are some best practices and what are some things we might need to consider as we look to cultivate those mentoring relationships that we even see in the Bible with like Paul and Timothy and Jesus and Peter, some of those?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I think that we must prioritize mentoring, discipling, because I think that all too often we can tend to think that I can disciple a group or a crowd, but that's not really what we're talking about. We want to make sure that we understand that it's a relationship, and I don't think true discipleship can take place out of the context of a relationship. So we want to value that and make that a priority, that we're not just simply thinking about, well, I've got my group of students or my group of children, and I can just speak from the pulpit, or I can speak to even a class and feel like that's a mentor relationship. So I would prioritize that by looking for opportunities on a weekly basis, on a regular basis, meeting with an individual in a public place, having an opportunity maybe over lunch or after school, having those times of prayer, talking to students, adults about what God's doing in their life, and make sure that I'm having that regular time. But for youth and children, I think that it would be most appropriate to be, in a public setting. Dr. Peavy, what other thoughts?
Well, when I was a youth, I had a youth director, we called our youth director at that time, who took a particular special interest in me and my best friend and our spiritual development. And it was a woman, she met with us after school 1 day a week for 2 hours, and we had Bible study and prayer time and accountability and all kinds of things. And it was, like you said, Dr. Dean, it was revolutionary for me. It was wonderful. It stretched us in ways we weren't getting in our regular Bible study time when I was a youth. And with children, of course, it's a little different because we engage with them more in structured kinds of activities, particularly if we're talking about through church. But there have been a number of children through the years that I've had very special relationships with, that were not my own children. And what I find with that is when you engage with a child, you engage with a family. And so I always encourage people to make good, positive relationships with a child's parent, guardian. Sometimes it's not the parent. Sometimes it's an aunt or grandparent. So that they're comfortable with who you are and that they trust you because their precious child is in your care. And but I have found with children, it's not always so much one-on-one as much as it is maybe a group of children. I found that for me and for others, I encourage them to attend their ball games, to get to know the family. So then if you're taking a child and a friend, see, we want to be in groups. I think it can be awkward for a child sometimes, particularly in the beginning of a relationship, to be, I've not ever been off with this person by myself, but it can be a little awkward. But I think if you have another person with you, another adult with you, even a third person in your group, to go out and get an ice cream cone and then sit and talk about life. I had a mother say to me one time, because her daughter confided a great deal in me, she said, I trust you and I trust your judgment, And I trust that if it's something I need to know, you'll tell me. Otherwise, I know you'll give her the kind of counsel I would give her. So I'm okay with that. And that's really the place where we want to be with the parents of children. Parents are a child's first mentors and the most important mentors they will ever have. And so I think particularly with children, we want to engage the family as much as possible so that they can see that we are united in caring for them and leading them in formation. Now, all children do not have spiritual formation happening at home in a positive way. We may be the only Christian influence in a child's life, but I think we still have to develop those relationships with the family so that they don't see us as a threat, but as a support to them.
I'd like to follow up with what you said, Dr. Peavy. I think there's stacks and stacks of research that shows that the parent is the most important mentor in a child's life. But there's also a lot of evidence, I think, we can find it biblically, but also in social science that says that another significant adult
Yes.
can back up and support
Yes.
what the parent is saying.
Right. So the kid says,
pretty powerful.
hey, it's not just my
Yeah.
parents, it's other people too. It's other people
That's right.
speaking that word into me.
That's
And
right.
so, yes, recently I had a friend of mine from high school who called me, who said that my mother was the most powerful influence in her life. She said, your mother just told us like it was. She always spoke the word of God into us. And all these years later, she hasn't seen my mother probably in 25, 30 years. But it has been a powerful influence in her life. So we never really know the legacy, really, that we leave through people when we mentor them with the Word of God and model a Christ likeness, but before them.
So it is possible to have mentoring relationships in children and youth ministry today in the local church, even with the changing society. We just have to be careful and be sure that we are accountable for our actions and our relationships, and that's true even as adults, because it's even complicated just to mentor one-on-one as adults, but it's still possible. Dr. Stone, Dr. Stewart, others?
Yeah, I was just gonna, as I'm listening, I'm thinking back, one of the things we need to keep in mind is mentoring can be awkward. How do you get started in it? But
Right.
I think we can reflect a little bit and say, how did somebody mentor us? All of us have already said somebody influenced our lives, and my sense is most of us in ministry, somebody was a mentor to us. So we can go back and think whether it was in childhood or adolescence or college. And it's really a problem for me. I'm thinking I have a serial mentors over a period of time. There's nobody stuck with me my whole life that I can recall, but there are different seasons I've gone through and a different person God put in my life to invest in me over a period of time.
But there's probably some people you can call.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Who were in that season.
right.
You can call them today.
I can call them today
Yeah.
because
That's right.
we
Yeah.
forged such a relationship
Yeah.
then. And in terms of leaders, one of the things, I think there's a tendency sometime for us to go and look for the leader in the church that we're going to invest in. But I would suggest that we really want to look maybe sometime people on the fringe. Jesus didn't call out the leaders of his day. The people that he invited to be leaders in the kingdom were marginal people in their world. And we need to look in our own church, who's out there that our investment in them might be potential leaders for the next generation of our
So you
church.
just tipped your hat, Dr. Stone.
Yes, I did.
You said that mentors should choose the mentee. I mean, does anybody think that the mentee should choose the mentor?
Well, I think
It
it
could
can
go
go
both
either way.
ways. I mean,
I have had people say I would, that they wanted to be mentored. It certainly has to be a mutual understanding between two people. But yes, it can go.
I think it can go both
Yeah,
ways.
I spoke to a young teacher yesterday who was she was quite emotional because actually she had made a mistake and had been called out on that, but she was smiling at the same time because she said what was said to me was in my correction. It wasn't myself who corrected her, it was someone else who said, I expect more from you. You're so capable. You can do better. And so there has to be some corrective action. And that's what a mentor does. A mentor says, whoops, and sometimes that's a little painful, to hear. And yet, even through her emotional response to that, nobody likes to be corrected. It hurts, but to see her in tears but smiling at the same time, saying, "But you know, I sort of like I got slapped back a little bit. Well, not literally slapped. You know, I got corrected, but that's because I'm so capable. I'm so capable, and I think
But if
that's
that person senses that this person's going to value and love me
Yeah.
despite what needs to be corrected
Yeah.
or improved.
Yeah. There's a couple of takeaways to conclude our conversation. You're going to continue this with your mentor. It may even take a couple of mentor meetings to unpack it all. But just to recap, you need to figure out in your ministry situation what your church endorses in cultivating mentoring relationships with children and youth, and help your leaders understand that, and be sure you're mentoring the younger generations. Another takeaway that you need to unpack with your mentor is, how do you encourage parents to be a primary mentor in their kids' lives for their entire life? It doesn't stop when they move out of the house. It doesn't stop when they go to college. But how does a parent, how does a grandparent become mentors for those kids and grandkids for their entire life, to show them the example? Another thing is, how do you find adults within your ministry setting that you're just going to pour your life into, that you're going to be that Paul for them, and just be sure that you're mentoring another generation that's going to come alongside, take the faith, make disciples. And then a final thing is, how are you going to be sure you're somebody's mentee and that someone is speaking into your life? Because you know what? I have senior adults speaking into my life, because even as a professor, I've not arrived where I need to be. I'm still in process. And so I still have mentors that speak into my life. Some days I just need someone to tell me to get it together, that I'm being a jerk. Some days I need somebody to just be honest with me and tell me that, you know, I see something that you might need to work on. And so you need to have people in your life that you're even open to. So those are 4 takeaways that you need to cultivate with your mentor in your ministry setting today, and begin to get it in practice for your ministry for the rest of your life. Don't forget, mentoring relationships matter in the discipleship process.